So I met John. I came to know him 2015, I think. I started talking to him a lot, and I realized pretty quickly that one, that he was like a really intelligent and interesting human being. And the other was that he didn't have a driver's license. And we met in this really beautiful garden, and he pulled up on his bike, and he had a full lunch prepared, and he brought it all on his bike. And we had an amazing afternoon. He called me a week later and he was like, I'm going to come see you. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be at the bus station. And he said, no, I'll see you at about 3:00. I'm leaving at 9 right now. I was like, on your bike? Are you kidding me? You're going to ride your bike from Albany? And he was like, calm down. I do it all the time. And he did. And true to form, he was there actually a half an hour before schedule. He did not act as if this was a big deal, because for him it wasn't. And I was so intrigued with John. He worked and he lived and he socialized and he did everything by bike. And he wasn't preachy about it. He just did it. I was already kind of on this path of being a walker, and he really opened up the world of being a cyclist. What's always been a part of the Hudson Valley also is that there's always been a lot of people who actually are trying to get around without their cars. They're riding bikes, and for various reasons. And I would say that in the Hudson Valley, those people's experiences have been really not pleasant and dangerous. Over and over and over again, you just hear this same issue. Whether you're working with seniors, they're telling you, why can't I cross the street? If you're working with, parents, they're saying, like, why can't I let my kids walk to school? And it is essentially because we have invested very strongly in car infrastructure, and we have divested in human infrastructure. IBM was one of our biggest industries in the 60s, and that was also a very car-centric, very suburban, along with all that also came this idea that really the best place for people to be were in suburbs. So there's been this very deliberate shift. And the good news about that is we can move that needle back. That's one of the ones that we actually can do something about. Other places are doing things like they're taking out their stroads. They're taking out those sections that are very dangerous, and they are replacing them with parks and housing and places to park your bike and places that are inviting, for people to come to. So I would say that that's the state of the Hudson Valley right now, is that we're still under the influence of some not so good thinking. We usually think of this problem as being like a New York City type problem, a big city kind of problem, but this has actually become, anyway, in the last few years, a very serious small town problem too. I think it's very clear. There's always going to be bad drivers. There's always going to be distracted cyclists who don't follow rules. But there doesn't have to be 4-lane roads where everyone's going too fast. When we don't follow the rules or we make a mistake, which is really more likely, right? We just make a mistake. It doesn't have to be fatal. It doesn't have to be catastrophic. We can create roads that encourage drivers to go slower. And it works. It works. This is a very preventable thing. I really wish people would get past this idea that if you get hit by a car, it's going to make you rich. Because nothing could be further from the truth, besides the fact that if you do survive, you're probably going to be left with some substantial disabilities, or at least it's very likely. You cannot come up with a dollar amount for taking away someone's child or someone's ability to walk or someone's leg. Just can't, really. But take all that aside, it is such an administrative process when something like this happens that it takes a very, very long time for families to get any kind of resolution. And when they do, it's almost always not enough. The residual effects, I think, of this kind of trauma on a person, on a community, this can turn into a generational dysfunction for our family. So I know families who have lost a person after they've been struck by a car and they've become homeless. So here is a family that was struggling to begin with, had somebody removed, and within 6 months, this family no longer is able to come up with enough money to keep a roof over their head. So all of these things are just present when this happens, and we just clean it all away. We don't have to push human beings to these limits. Trauma does not necessarily make you stronger. It's a really important thing to keep in mind. It breaks a hell of a lot more people than it makes stronger.
You ready? Are you going to give him a smile or are you going to give him a mean face and say you're angry? You're not angry. In the morning, she gets all her medications because she has developed seizure activity. And she also gets medicine for, like stomach and stuff like that. So we get it all ready. And then we give her all her meds in the morning, afternoon, evening. And then she gets her nebulizer treatments. We do that after this. She had a recent back injury like a year ago. She pretty much likes to be in the bed now. She doesn't really like the chair. We're in the process now of getting her a new wheelchair. Right? We need a comfy seat, and then maybe she'll want to get up hopefully more often. She is 27 now. She just turned 27 in October, and she graduated from there. She got her diploma and all that from Saugerties High School. So we're trying to get her into some kind of day program, but everything got crazy after, COVID and all that. So we're hoping to at least get a program, like adult program for like 1 or 2 days a week just to get her out and about. Right? Get you some social activity. There we go. Now you're doing it. So that will run, she just hang out. Sometimes that will make her cough, and she has a oral suction machine. And then this is the tube feed. Half the stuff I feel like I could do it in my sleep because I've been doing it for so long. So this year will be 20 years that we've been doing all this stuff. She was feisty, spunky. She loved to sing and dance. She loved Britney Spears and Justin Bieber, and she would put on a whole show for the whole family, tell everybody sit down, and she's going to play her song and do her little dance. She was the social butterfly. I was dropping off Jasmine at school, and then Destiny not far from there at the grandma's house for babysitting, and I was going to work. I hit a patch of ice, and I slid into the oncoming traffic, and the guy couldn't stop, so I got hit on the passenger side, and the car came in so far that the infant seat that was in the middle, Jasmine got pinned against the car seat and the door. So when I get to the hospital, they have Destiny there, and she's crying, and they're like, oh, here's your baby, and I'm like, okay. And I touch her, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, is she okay? And they said, oh, we're still checking her out, but she seems fine. And I'm like, in my heart, my brain just kept saying, where is Jasmine? Where is Jasmine? Where is Jasmine? Something's not right. And they're like, oh, she got sent to Benedictine, and we were at Kingston. And I'm like, why? Like, why would she go to Benedictine? And they were like, she needs to go, like, she has to go to Westchester. They said, we think she might need a surgery. And I'm like, what kind of surgery? And they said, oh, nothing major. We think that, she might have internal bleeding. They might have to stop it, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, no one told me. They did it to protect me and not make me lose my mind before I got to her, which was smart. Meanwhile, they were resuscitating her the whole time. They said at the scene of the accident, her heart has stopped. In the ambulance on the way there, her heart had stopped. When they got her in the helicopter, when they hit the altitude up in the air, her heart stopped again. I get to Westchester and the lady is like this young little lady. And I'm like, oh, are you the nurse? She goes, I'm the doctor. And I go, oh, you go, girl, like you're a doctor. And she just looked at me with this face. And I'm like, what? And the lady's like going down the list, like, oh, your daughter had multiple cardiac arrests, blah, blah, blah. I want you to be ready to see her. Like, she's on a breathing machine and this and that. She just kept going. Everything went foggy. I'm like, I don't want to hear no more. I said, just bring me to my kid, please. Like, this is hours. I've been waiting to get there. Like, so I get in there and she's just hooked up to everything. And I just lost it. She had multiple cardiac arrests. So she was left with lack of blood oxygen to her brain. So, sorry. They didn't think that she was going to survive past December of that year. She was on a ventilator. She couldn't breathe on her own. Like, she's never going to be the same. Like, she's never going to get up. She's not going to get up and talk and walk again. And I just ran outside and threw myself on the ground. But then, they did further testing to find out, did she have any brain activity? Can it get better? And they found out she did have brain activity, that it was slow and abnormal. So I decided to just keep going. And I spent 11 months at Blythedale learning how to take care of her. I learned how to change the trach, change the feeding tube, do everything I had to do. She exceeded the expectations of the neurologist that she used to see every couple of months. Like, we used to have to see him all the time. And then after a while, he's like, no one's going to know how far Jasmine's going to go. It's up to Jasmine. He goes, she already surpassed every expectation that I had of her. He goes, so, it's up to Jasmine. When she was a kid, everything was so different. Like, I could get everything I needed, no problem. And there was always someone ready to help me get it. Now I can't get nothing. I'm still looking to get her a wheelchair van that she is not able to get out as much as she could if she had that. Because my plan for that, I'm going to write up a good letter and just give it to the dealerships, because I think I could probably get somebody to give her a van. Maybe. This is going to be 20 years this December, and Jasmine has minimal funds in an account that I have still yet even able to access it. The only money that's in there is from my insurance company. My insurance obviously settled out immediately, but the other driver, his insurance got off of it. The city of Kingston got off of it. Like, that should have been the one that had to pay for it. The storm that snowed was days before that. There was no school like the day before. Like, the road all the way up until there was clear. Like, maybe even not even certain spots weren't even wet. So I think the road, obviously, it had improper drainage or something going on. I'm not even the only person that has crashed in that same exact spot. Jasmine had Eli Bosch as a lawyer. Eli Bosch's famous words to me are, he's so sorry, and this is his worst judgment of his whole career. All this time that it was going through the appeal process, Jasmine had spinal surgery. Jasmine had neurosurgery. Like, she had to get a shunt placed in her head. Like, she had so many things going on that I feel like should have been presented to them. When I said, I don't care about none of that, I just need medical for the rest of her life. Like, she's gonna need so much. And we didn't get any medical. This lawyer lady literally pulled out pictures of the accident that I had not even seen. All you see is just blood all over the car, blood all along the driver's side, the whole window, just blood all over. And I never saw that. She tried to say that I speeding? Like, what kind of night did I have the night before? Did I not sleep? Well, was I rushing to get my kids to school? Because I said I was on my way to school, my normal everyday routine. Was I rushing? No, I wasn't rushing. I said I couldn't have been speeding because I literally was in a line of cars. In the beginning, I was so traumatized that I wasn't even, I don't even know. Like, everything is a blur. Sometimes I feel like I'm having a stroke just to go in the grocery store. In the beginning, I couldn't do nothing. That's why I said it. It's like, it was like, I guess I was just like on autopilot. Like, I just went through the motions, but constant, like, I mean, I lived in fear. I thought something was always going to happen to her. So, I mean, it's a lot, but I wouldn't change it. We don't live a normal life. Like, I can't just say, oh, like, so-and-so's having a, sleepover, or this one's going camping for the weekend. Like, come with us. Like, we can't, you know what I mean? Or, even to do stuff for them. Like, I just had to do a whole planning session, for like, I think we were gone for 40 hours, you know what I mean? Like an overnight for her 13th birthday. Like, it's just, they miss out on a lot. They don't get to go like other kids, I've only been on one vacation this whole time in 20 years. My friends took me to Las Vegas. That was probably when we first moved here. So probably like 10 years. Me and my brother were supposed to go to Puerto Rico to visit our family and see our dad. And then, my brother passed away. So I never got to go with him. So I've been telling myself for years now, I'm going to just go by myself. Like, I'm going to go. I want to go, and I probably could go. Like, I could throw some staff, like this nurse could cover this shift, a friend fill in. But I feel guilty if I go and then Jasmine's not comfortable. You know what I mean? Like, you can have so much from someone who doesn't even speak a word, like, in 20 years, she hasn't spoke a word, but we found a way I understand her. Like, she gets her point across. We know when she's happy. We know when she's sad, if she's having pain, like, and it's fun to see when she is having a good time. Like, when she laughs out loud, like, that makes me feel good that I know, I've done good.
Starley was just really good-natured, right from the start. Starley and I moved to Saugerties when Starley was just a year old. When she was a toddler, she would help other little kids, help them stand up, and that's who she was. She'd help us to stand up. I mean, it was just the two of us for 4 years before I met my husband, before she decided that she wanted a baby sister and she wanted him to be dad. She decided. They bickered, of course, like sisters, and they loved each other so much. Starley went to Woodstock Day School her whole career in school. I think it was really important that she was in a place where, for me, I felt like my daughter needed to be in a place where she could have as much nature as I could give her, as much of a joyful experience, that her school career wasn't just having to rush to classes and do homework, but be able to experience life. Starley wanted to bring truth and honest reporting rather than disinformation. Starley worked way too hard trying to make her senior project about disinformation and misinformation and how we get past that. She started to find her way to what looked like it was going to be a law career, probably defending innocent people. She was a social justice warrior, not a bad thing, a really good thing. She really was a stand for everyone having rights and being okay. And this is a time when I feel like the world really needed someone like her and more people to be like her now. She just wanted to be present in this world. Starlee was about as authentic as you get. And she was so funny and she was so quirky and she loved to dance. It sounds cliche, but she's sort of a beacon of hope. I mean, really, like for people who might not have made it otherwise. Starlee wanted justice for everything good for everyone. And that's the kind of person Starlee was and is in my heart. I'm hard to carry that on because I'm a little bit broken, more than a little. I hug Catherine and she hugs me and we feel like we're hugging Starlee together because that's the closest we've got. The last time I hugged Starlee, it was so nice to hug my little big girl, and I said, my little Starlee, my big girl Starlee. I mean, my young fledgling adult Starlee. I couldn't believe she was almost 21. Then she turned 21, and she would have been almost 22. And then January, after Christmas break, I couldn't hug her again. She was walking home. Starlee was walking home. She was visiting me from college. On January 10th, her very dear friend who she had known since childhood, Jonathan, was walking with her. They had been on a hike and they were just walking on a patch of road that happened to be not having a sidewalk, I guess. But they were on the side. I don't think this has been any easier on him than it has been on me. I think the shock of watching Starlee be hit by a car that didn't even brake, that didn't even slow down. And he said he saw her fly 40 feet, I think he said. I can't even fathom this. I don't think he can, what he saw. And he was with her alone. And it's more messed up than I think I can imagine. And I don't want to. Any of 9W is very comfortable to drive where people are usually tailgating. And I've had people tell me this before this even happened, that they've been through this before. It's very frustrating because people are tailgating when you're going at the speed limit. And the speed limit's 45 there, which I think is high, but people speed. And this woman who killed Starlee was probably speeding. And I know that because that's just how people drive around here. And there's no excuse for her behavior. I hope that people realize that you need to be accountable, that you need to stay. She's being charged with leaving the scene. There's nothing right about a situation where your daughter is killed. As soon as Starlee was killed, I was like, this is an alternate reality. This isn't real. You know, nothing made sense anymore. The way people are being killed and harmed on roads, just walking or riding bicycle or even in a car, it's a national health crisis. It just feels like it's gotten crazy. It's gotten worse. The shock of losing someone so suddenly, especially someone so dear, in traffic violence, I don't know how else to call it. And it makes it hard for me to drive without being hyper vigilant. I'm probably safer as a driver, but it's a trauma that is with me when I'm in traffic, when I'm driving, when I'm looking at cars, when I'm looking at people walking around cars. It's hard to not think about this all the time and wish it would be safer. If she knew somebody in her village had been hit by a car and killed in a hit and run, Starley would take up her social justice arms, which are just human arms, and make sure that there was better infrastructure. She'd make sure that there was a bicycle path right there and a sidewalk right there, and walk with me over to the police station and say why, what's going on, or to the Department of Motor Vehicles or Transportation or whatever the things are. And she would say, why is this happening? How do we make this right? This is our village. We have a responsibility to make sure that people aren't killed. Starley really was one of those people that just made the world a better place. I'm hoping that people will be more like Starley. And I miss her, and fucking slow down, people.
John was killed right here on Washington Avenue on July 20th, 2021. Directly behind me is the location where John and his friend Andy and their friend Steve were coming off the trail that's located directly over here. We're attempting to cross this street. We dehumanize people so quickly when these things happen, and we remove their voice as quickly as possible that the cars can keep rolling through. The fact that this was the way that John lost his life, a person who never extracted anything from this system. John was crossing this street, and that driver who was coming out of there was delivering food. The man who took John's life was never tested for impairment, which is the only way you can really hold somebody accountable unless they leave the scene. He was delivering food the next night. People are coming off this trail now more than ever because they've expanded it and connected it. And they're coming off the trail and they're trying to cross here because there is no other place to safely cross. Your options are to either cross here and take your chances, which by the way is perfectly legal because this is an intersection. But as you can also see, it's completely unsafe. You have to walk all the way down there on a very broken up sidewalk that's very unforgiving. If you're walking, if you're biking, you have to go through what is now 6 lanes of very confusing traffic and get to a traffic light up there that does not have a decent, viable crosswalk. Or you've got to go in that direction
walk or ride along this road. On some sections there's sidewalk, but not too much. And go down to Sawkill, which is also does not have a crosswalk and is really not designed to safely get people across the streets. If you get across the street and you get into the lot there, when you go through, on the other side is Kingston Plaza, which has doctor's offices and the only supermarket in this immediate area, and lots of other things that people need to access. There's no excuse for this. We know that this is not acceptable. We know that this is an equity issue. We know that this is a safety issue. We know that this is the result of years of car-centered planning that ripped communities apart. If you see what this street used to be, back when there were houses and businesses, it was an actual functioning street, which it is not anymore. It is now a highway for basically all intents and purposes. People have to feel this. They have to understand what it is to try to cross a street like this when you have no other choice. We're in our cars a lot, and that's dangerous enough, you know, but it keeps us very isolated. It keeps us very insulated also from the violence that surrounds us. When something terrible like this happens, we're seeking justice, some kind of justice, which, you know, sometimes is just, for lots of different reasons, very elusive. But what we used to really do is make people sit down and look at each other and say, I did you wrong, and I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again, because this was wrong. This was an injustice, and I recognize it, and I'm going to take it on. And we don't make drivers do that. Very few, anyway, very few. We're very quick to clean up the mess and have everybody get back to work. Meanwhile, families like mine are just left dumbfounded. Like, we don't even, to use a really bad pun, but we don't know what hit us. When John was killed, I was actually a traffic safety educator. I was getting a grant from the governor's traffic safety committee, and I was working in this field, so I had an understanding of what I was up against when John was killed, and also the power of my voice, because so many people just get no voice. That's just completely robbed from them. So I wasn't going to squander that. I was not going to squander that. If anything was coming out of this, John's voice was not getting killed, and my voice was not getting killed. He may have been killed. I knew when this happened that there probably weren't going to be any tickets. The police probably were not going to do any kind of investigation. And there was going to be a lot of cruelty in the comments and social media and from the police, who made statements to the press like nobody was going 100 miles an hour, nothing wrong happened. John was dead, but nothing wrong happened. You can't really understand it unless it's happened to you. And I say this knowing, though, that this has happened to so many people. So I'm not alone. I don't mean to make my story sound unique. The strangeness of it is such a tremendous health crisis. So justice for John is fixing this. It's the only thing we're getting.